Winston Churchill, renowned for resilience, leadership, and an indomitable spirit. But beyond the battlefield and political stage, Churchill was a man of remarkable personal style. His tastes, as carefully curated as his speeches, helped craft his powerful persona and left an indelible mark on British culture.
Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and in this new series, we're going to take a closer look at one of history's most compelling and stylish figures, Winston Churchill.
Churchill once quipped, "My tastes are simple. I'm easily satisfied with the best." On what is the 150th anniversary of his birth, we embark on a journey to explore what these tastes reveal about the man behind the legend and how they helped shape the British icon we remember today. From his cherished cigars, favorite champagne, and signature fragrance, to his bespoke wardrobe, our journey starts at his birthplace, Blenheim Palace, travels through the prestigious boutiques and tailors of London's Mayfair, and concludes at Chartwell House, where he spent his final years.
So join me as we explore the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition, unstitching the finest of British heritage and gaining fresh insights into the man who set the standard for what it meant to be a true English gentleman. In this episode, our journey of discovery continues as we delve deeper into the man behind the bulldog scowl, exploring how his wardrobe became an emblem of British resilience and distinction. Today, we're on London's Savile Row, where bespoke tailoring has been practiced as an art form for centuries. And here, one name rises above the rest, Henry Poole. Established in 1806, Henry Poole has long been celebrated for its quality, craftsmanship, and an extraordinary client list of aristocrats, celebrities, and titans of industries. Winston Churchill first walked through these doors in December 1905, commissioning a ministerial uniform and beginning a relationship with Henry Poole that would span 6 decades. Today, we're joined by my dear friend Simon Cundy, Managing Director and 7th generation family member, as we explore how Churchill's relationship with Henry Poole helped shape his public image of elegance, power, and style. Simon, it's so great to be back. And it's been an incredible journey so far. In our first chapter, really beginning at Blenheim Palace. And then here, stepping back inside Henry Poole, one of my favorite places really in all of the world. To open the book, to continue to unstitch, in some ways, the fabric of Churchill's identity as one of the most iconic and important figures of the 20th century. And I understand that Henry Poole has a long-standing relationship with Churchill that stretches back decades.
It does indeed, Kirby. And he's probably one of our greatest customers and finest customers. And really, we generated a wardrobe for him, which stood the test of time.
And when did that begin? When did that relationship with Poole first start?
So obviously we had his father. He was here. Then later in life, as he's making his way up, 1905 is the time he came and joined us. He really came to be measured in around December, and then soon after, in January, actually started the first garment for him.
And this first garment that he had made, talk to me about this, because this is the turn of the 20th century. I mean, we still have elements of the Edwardian era, very much a part of the tradition of tailoring. So for someone that's maybe not very familiar with that, what garment did he have made first, and what would have been the ceremonial or social purpose of that garment?
Well, going back to the Edwardian times, and you had to look at something like Eden, he was very much the last of that generation, so the frock coat was mostly worn. And you'll see them about 1900, 1910, 1915, having this sort of regalia, long frock coats, waistcoat, high waist trousers, top hats often worn. This was that period. Even the Americas, J.P. Morgan had been wearing the same sort of thing. So really it was around the 1920s, things started changing to the lounge dining jacket, lounge three-piece suits. So really, he would have been changing into that sort of style. And then, of course, he had to wear the various parliamentary items to be taking part in events. And of course, some of it was very diplomatic. So this garment, which you would have with us, really was the sort of household diplomatic dress you'd wear at Buckingham Palace. So when his state visits came, this is what you had. And this is indeed where we have the garment, just to the right of me here, is this very much, it is a quite understated garment. You don't have the full dress, where you have just really the cuffs, the collar, and very much the buttons would be showing it off.
Yeah.
This is the day-to-day. So when you're going in there to meet with Her Majesty, you'll be talking about diplomatic situations across the countries, across the colonies. And then, of course, the next stage was, this was only in January this was ordered. But literally in May, he came back again and said, I need to wear the one for the evening. And that's a much, much more dressier one. And now we're moving on to the full state. So this is now the full state with all the beautifully braid and embroidery that went on top of the front and the back. As you can see, it goes from the front, and then you take it around the back, and you really have this beautiful design.
And would have this been for civilians or for only people in the military?
No. This is actually parliamentary.
Parliamentary,
Yeah,
okay.
and
So
court.
people in government.
In court. This would be for representing the country.
Okay.
In Parliament.
What I find so fascinating about this is, that thread of history that stretches through a firm like Henry Poole, stretching past, back not just, decades, generations, but centuries, and seeing how in this era, right, Henry Poole would have been making these garments. But even some of the echoes like this, can still be found in the work that you're doing today for the royal household, or even in something, as unique as a smoking jacket.
Yeah, no, that's very much true. We still obviously make the royal household, the royal mews for their garments which are on the horses, which again have this kind of regalia on the four parts, and have been doing so since Queen Victoria. So that alone is a division of our work, the livery side. And then also, of course, now with the smoking jackets, we have very much these detailing of cuff and brocade that's done on the jackets is much the same. So it's still there.
And so Churchill's need for these two garments would have been very indicative of his entry into government and really rise to prominence. 31 years old, right? A part of the royal court, or at least parliamentary, dignitaries being invited into Buckingham Palace, right? So this was, an important, in some ways, moment or transition in his life that necessitated a different wardrobe.
I think so. If you go back and you looked at his surroundings of the great men he was already established with, and I think obviously with his family ties and history, he was already mingling with these, people of power, that he was probably in his comfort zone, but nevertheless would had to be now upstage himself with the court, the dress, the uniforms that he'd be going into. So he found himself a tailor that he felt at home with. And Poole was that kind of place where you could walk in and feel at home with. Yeah. So you could ask the question, you could ask the detail, how to wear it, when to wear it, how should it be, how do I look after it?
Yeah.
Often the tailors did look after the uniforms. And we still do that today.
Yeah.
So that's in his world was very much that. So there is a tale that goes with the family that with my grandfather and my great uncle who looked after Sir Winston. When he did join us, he was quite petite, but he had a very strong, larger head than actually the size of body.
Okay.
So we actually had to make a longer or a bigger chest area drape to make him look stronger than he really physically was. So the balance of his body was smaller than really proportions of his head. And that's the kind of thing which tailors do as well.
Yeah, and continue to do to this day. Right. I mean,
very much.
Is working with the garment to really balance the aesthetic or the profile of your clients. Yeah,
to balance it all up.
And it's incredible that you have all these entries in this book. I mean, this is what strikes me and that I find so mesmerizing about the British heritage firms was that commitment, or at least practice or tradition, of really documenting what in retrospect has become history.
Yeah. Well, for us, these are actual, priceless books that, really, there are other tailors that have this from periods of time, but we probably have the most extensive from 1846. So with the ledgers, that's very important to us because they're priceless, they're something special. Poole has had these since 1846, where he really made a point of keeping every number of garment, every item of garment, when it was purchased, who indeed the title was at that point, and where it was delivered to, and how much it cost. So we have these ledgers that you can pull off the measures, what they ordered. You can see a journey with Sir Winston in terms of his clothes, going from very much having to wear to state events to casual wear, where for him it was comfortable and day to day.
Okay.
So some of the city suits, you know, as herringbones with the lovely mooring stripe trousers. Again, that's very much a London city event, but he enjoyed wearing those at parliamentary affairs, city affairs, and that kind of thing. And then slowly we got into the more, sort of day-to-day stripes, herringbones, and very much the old heavy flannels and serges. But then he still had to do other items, like you'll see in the books from, obviously British warm was very much a uniform as much as it was a pleasure to wear.
Yeah. So as Winston Churchill's career continues to develop in politics, right? I mean, of course, whenever we think of him, in a city suit, like this beautiful flannel that we see right here. Talk to us a little bit about kind of that journey and evolution, and maybe some of these iconic garments that, because of Sir Winston Churchill being photographed in them, like this, chalk stripe with the Tommy gun, have truly become iconic and really cemented into the historical memory of that era.
Yep, I mean, that's just it. It's as many customers, they become iconically famous for a moment in time, and that garment they're worn is made by Poole. And we have indeed the Home Guard, 1936, basically the dauntingness of this power that was getting larger and larger in Germany and was already starting to flex its muscles in Europe. So that point was the time where he went out, and he was famously photographed by someone who turned up with a Tommy gun that said, let me have a go. Which, so Winston must have been a bit of a character where he wanted to be involved with everything part of it. And you can see that in the paintings where he painted. But in doing so, that famous shot of him with the Tommy gun became that character, or that famous suit made by Henry Poole. And that was the Churchill short stripe flannel. At that time, it was 18 ounces, but these days today, we make it about 11 ounces.
Yeah. But I mean, this is an iconic suit and an iconic fabric. I mean, we have single-breasted, right, notch lapels, waistcoat, the famous, polka dot bow tie. But I feel like Sir Winston was a man that understood the power of subtlety. And, although this isn't a particular subtle suit, one's wardrobe, in many ways you could say is a subtle signal of power. And it seems like in this suit, he really understood the purpose of that.
Yeah, I think you can get that with stripes. I mean, stripes give you a power element. They're still very much that legal barrister, going in there to defend and, stand up and say a point. And this was that kind of suit. Otherwise, it would have been like a grey herringbone or a serge, which was very, calm and
much more subdued.
So this was very much his look. And there was tales with my grandfather saying that every time we had clothes back, you would have to examine the clothes closely because you'd probably find some big cigar stubs in his pocket. So when you come to iron, you would feel these smells, scent of tobacco would come rising up.
I mean, the more that we look into Winston Churchill's life, the more that it becomes apparent, just how much, his enjoyment and love for life really permeated every corner. And he wasn't a man that was known to, to moderation, right? If he enjoyed something, he enjoyed it in excess, right? We see this with cigars, we saw it in champagne, we see it even, at florists with his, fragrance orders, which were, in some instances, multiple times a month. His wife was going back to the florist to, top off or reorder. And then we see it in his wardrobe, of the intentionality and the way that he was really commissioning from his tailors, from Henry Poole, pieces that were purposeful and intentional.
Yeah, no, that's it. So, here to your left of you, of course, is the squadron, the Royal Yacht Squadron, one of the oldest sailing clubs in the world. This still very much is a club today. Famed for obviously the great race around the island, which became known as the America's Cup, which of course we still celebrate. Winston loved his sailing as well. So you have to have 4 uniforms to be a member of this club. Each has a purpose, and this is just one of them. The reefer jacket, which of course is worn with white flannel trousers. So again, that's another part of a wardrobe that you have to work with. You have to actually wear each of those items. They have a purpose during that sort of year of being a member. For various celebrations, and the same thing with a British warm. It's a very practical garment. It stands a a lifetime to wear some of that.
How heavy is that?
That's about 32 ounces.
Okay.
32 ounces. You know, this is
A proper winter coat.
proper winter coat. You know, we still make it today, and we still get orders from it. Often in blue, but
Okay.
not so much, very much the sort of dust color as it is known.
And this was another garment of Winston's.
This was another garment of Winston. This was very much worn with, this would be the Yalta conference, basically, with Starling and, of course, Roosevelt, when they got together. The famous bench where they all sat together. And this is very much his garment.
I mean, I find it so important, you know, to just remind oneself of the social context of that era and how what you wore really in many ways was a uniform that was required socially. I mean, at a certain social level, you had to have a tuxedo, you had to have tails. You know, if you were in a particular club, you had to have these garments. I mean, it was part of the social fabric.
It was seen fit. You were fit to be a member because you steered to the rules, you enjoyed the moment, you embellished the surroundings and brought the next generation into the club, taught them how to be the right kind of person for that club.
But in many ways, you weren't fit if you didn't have the wardrobe. It was a prerequisite socially.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is why, you know, especially in Britain, one's tailor, at least for a gentleman, was such an important part of his social apparatus. I mean, you know, as important in some ways as one's doctor, right? I mean, you know, they said, you know, a gentleman had his, you know, his barber, his doctor, and his tailor. You know,
Hopefully we had the better.
yeah, the better. That's right. And anyone commissioning bespoke clothing would have had an expectation of durability and longevity. You know, you've got 6 decades of history with Winston Churchill. Were his garments coming back, and you know, how did the same garment, you know, how did its life look, you know, over the course of his lifetime?
Typically, you know, some of these garments, like obviously Squadron, like British Form, these were ongoing, long-term garments which needed a little bit of tweaking because his body was changing. He was enjoying life, as we know, in many proportions of food to wine to champagne. So we had to work with the clothes. So the extensions of basically the adjustments were made all the time. There was things like buttons and, you know, stitchings that you would obviously may have to tweak and do that kind of thing. And this is what took the place. But of course, you know, there's also a point of things were lasting longer and he was enjoying life. So his bill was getting obviously a little bit more and more. And there was a point where he, in turn, had a little, you know, I would say, blip period where the sort of...
Well, there is a pretty legendary story of the bill. So share that with us, because it's no secret. It's been written about.
It's been written about, and it concludes as well, because, you know, so Winston, when he was actually made Premier and Prime Minister, you know, everyone was congratulating him. By then he had racked up a little bit of a bill with us. And it was, you know, my grandfather was very much the gentleman, my uncle was very much the gentleman, diplomatically enough, saying, you know, well, you know, to Winston, as and means, as and when. And this went on, but it was when he was made Parliament, the accountant had the, you know, bright spark idea to send rather than send it to build a chart, well, as we've been doing for years and years, he sent it to
his new address.
Can you imagine that everyone's opening the mail up and he's looking at
a bill from his tailor.
He said, congratulations, and here's your account.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine. The letter came back to my father, or my grandfather rather, who was horrified with the accountant who had done such a thing. And the services, it just basically came back saying, thank you for your services.
Was there at least a check?
There was no
check.
There was still no check. But, you know, a couple of years later, everything that worked out. And so Winston came back to Poole. And really it was a time then where, you know, he got everything. The wardrobe's now full. There's a few things he wanted in life. There's a lot of repairs going through in the books. And really, that really was as you know, Princess Elizabeth were being ready for her, obviously, coronation. So he really wanted to be everything perfect.
Yeah.
So all those suits were coming back to be refurbished, to be repressed, to be, you know, nurtured back to what they were, to fit right for him, to be present with Queen Elizabeth, the future queen.
Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to the durability of a bespoke wardrobe. And I find that, you know, there's such a emphasis on the product. I mean, it's a beautiful product, right? I mean, it's the best in the world at what it is. But behind that exists this integrity that is through, of course, the fitting processes, but also through the construction, the handwork. And that exists not for the sake of embellishment. I mean, something like this is certainly embellishment. But behind that fabric exists handwork that exists for the sake of durability and
ultimately reliability, so that one can rely on their suits and know that the seams aren't going to rip open, buttons aren't going to fall off, and that, the garment, despite how demanding you are on it, because of your life, I mean, in Sir Winston's case, basically saving the free world, that your garment is always going to be there for you and look great.
Yep, that's pretty much what we did. Unless the rules change.
And it's what you continue to do.
Oh, we'll continue to do as well. Yes, absolutely. This is what the joy is. And we're proud of it. And someone like Sir Winston, you cannot get a better sort of ambassador in some respects than what he did for us and still does today. People come from all over the world to have that suit made, to be a part of an heritage of what Sir Winston did, and enjoy very much the moments of time to visit the many things that we'll be visiting on a trip this time. And I'm very much looking forward to see some of these garments that have been hidden away for years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you look back at, Poole's relationship with Winston Churchill, is there one garment or one story that stands out above all the rest?
Oh, that's a tough one, Kirby. I think I see him still very much in the chair with his, city suit on, with his cigar, looking at you in the eye, and how he must have felt at that time, whether he had done his job, whether he had done enough.
Yeah.
And I think that picture always gets to me, and I think that hangs over your study or your library or your bar. That to me is a poignant point in his time, which stands quite, special to me as being his tailor.
Yeah.
As being his person and looked after his journey in the war.
Yeah. And in some small ways, I mean, really kind of helping to support, his career, his life, but more importantly, the man that had such an incredible impact, really on the entire world in the 20th century.
I do still travel, as you know, to many parts of the world, the Americas, Europe, and I still think that I come across customers, even from Japan, that are absolutely mesmerized by a character like that. And they're quite happy to talk about it and ask questions about it. And knowing that Poole dressed him is often, I get the same questions asked. Who was he as a person? And even though I'm limited in my lifetime from my grandfather of knowledge, but I do have this rapport with customers who still come to hear partly of the fact that Churchill was here, which is quite remarkable.
Wow. Well, Simon, thank you so much for opening up these books and sharing with us this incredible thread of history.
Thank you, Kirby, and I'm looking very much forward to find some of these hidden garments in our journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
From our time here at Henry Poole, it's evident that for Churchill, a suit from this storied tailor was more than just clothing. It was a rite of passage and a uniform for public service. Winston Churchill's style was as formidable as his leadership, and Henry Poole brought that vision to life. Together, they created a sartorial legacy that continues to inspire, proving that true style is rooted in quality, tradition, and individuality. As we reflect on Churchill's life, we remember not just the man, but the image he crafted, a testament to the enduring and timeless power of a well-tailored suit. In every stitch, there is a story, and every suit, a legacy. And for Winston Churchill, it was Henry Poole who helped him tell it. Along with his iconic suits, images of Churchill's array of hats come to mind when thinking about him. But these weren't just any hats, they were Lock & Co. hats. Founded in 1676, Lock & Co. is the world's oldest hat shop. And over the centuries, they've crowned the heads of royalty, nobility, and icons like Churchill. Today, we next venture inside this British institution to explore how their hats help define the look of one of Britain's most revered leaders. Paul, thank you so much for having me in, and of course, always an honor to be back here inside Lock & Co., the oldest shop in all of London, and one that would have been very familiar to any well-dressed gentleman here in London, especially in Churchill's era.
Absolutely, yes. We were actually founded in 1676. The original shop was actually opposite, just across the road there.
Okay.
But we later moved the business across into this building in 1765. So if you look at our history as hatters, our previous clientele included the likes of Admiral Lord Nelson, the Duke of Wellington from the Napoleonic Wars, Hollywood showbiz celebrities such as Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Oscar Wilde, Charlie Chaplin, and many more. So if you want to buy yourself the finest hat from the best hat shop, for these reasons that he preferred to come here at Lock & Co to buy his most iconic hats, the top hat, the Homburg and the Cambridge.
Yeah, and he would have been walking through this same door into this same shop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incredible. You know, this day and age, especially in America, you know, we don't see very many men wearing hats. But in Churchill's era, a man was never seen really without a hat. Can you help us understand a little bit the social context of his era? You know, the late 19th, early 20th century, leading all the way up through the 1950s and 60s with the coronation of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth. What was hat culture at that time?
Winston Churchill was born in 1874 during the reign of Queen Victoria. So this was the height of the Victorian era, when hat wearing was ubiquitous amongst all classes of Victorian society, from the very poorest of people right through to the wealthiest, the most affluent, and the nobility, etc. So Churchill would have worn a hat of some description anyway. However, he also believed that prominent people should have a distinctive symbol for recognition. So he used hats to create his desired image and to distinguish himself from others. I think his strategy worked out quite well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly has. I mean, what hats would have been a part of a man like Winston's wardrobe? Because again, he wouldn't have just had one hat, he would have had many hats.
So probably the most iconic hats that Churchill wore were the silk top hat, the Homburg and the Cambridge.
Can you show those to me?
Of course.
These are the hats that Churchill would have been wearing.
Absolutely, yes. So the silk top hat is the most formal hat, which he wore often, typically with the high crown and the flat top to the crown. The top hat was first created in 1793.
Okay.
Was originally made from beaver fur felt, but very soon after that, in 1797, there was this new silk plush or hatter's plush invented by John Hetherington at the Strand, Charing Cross, just down the road from here. And this became the hat to wear. The first time he wore his silk top hat, he caused quite a stir.
Really?
Famously so. He caused a near riot, was actually arrested for causing a breach of the peace.
And why was that?
So when he walked out, it was said that his appearance caused women to faint, children to cry, dogs to bark.
He just looked that good.
Exactly. Apparently the wording on the charge was something like he was wearing a tall, shiny construction upon his head calculated to frighten timid people.
Amazing.
So he was actually arrested. This made the papers. And then, of course, everybody wanted one.
That's incredible. I mean, this is truly a mythical hat because they can't even be purchased new anymore. One either inherits a silk top hat or buys a vintage one.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this was the fashion for 100, 150 years or so, up to the 1960s. By then, not so fashionable. So there was only one factory in the world left making the silk plush in France. The owner died. He had two sons. And apparently one of the sons had been disinherited. So the story goes that apparently out of spite, he burnt the factory down. So all the looms and the machinery and the technology of how to make this silk plush was lost forever. Today, nobody's been able to replicate the same kind of quality of silk plush. So the only ones, as you say, that are around nowadays are vintage ones.
Yeah.
So we've gone backwards in technology. So new top hats today are made from beaver fur felt or from rabbit as a cheaper option.
Beautiful. What about these other hats?
So the bowler hat, or as we call it, the cook hat, was conceived here in 1849. There was a nobleman called Edward Cook, who was the younger brother of the second Earl of Leicester. He came here to commission a new hat for his gamekeepers for his Holcombe estate in Norfolk, because the fashion at the time was the tall silk top hat, which are quite delicate. But if you can imagine hunting, gamekeeping on horseback with low-hanging branches, etc., the silk top hat's not the most practical headwear for that kind of use. So they would be easily knocked off with low-hanging branches, and they were delicate, so they could easily be damaged. So at that time, we had a partner here who was our felt supplier and hatter called Thomas Bowler, who had a hat business with his brother, William Bowler, in Southwark, in South London here. So he came up with the prototype, which he brought back to the shop here, where it was shown to Mr. Cook, who reputedly threw it on the floor, stamped on it a couple of times to test its durability and strength, and gave it his seal of approval.
Really?
So the birth of the bowler hat happened here, which was actually originally created as a hard protective helmet.
Oh, really?
For equestrian use. So this year we're celebrating the 175th anniversary of the Cook hat.
And so how would Churchill have worn this hat? Not one that I recognize from many of his photographs.
The only picture I've seen him wearing the classic Cook hat or bowler hat is of him as a child.
Okay.
He preferred a hat which was a combination of the tall silk top hat and the classic bowler hat, known as the Cambridge.
Really? Okay.
So the next hat I'd like to show you is the Cambridge, which, as I said, is a cross between the tall silk top hat with a flat top and the lower domed crowned bowler hat. So it's kind of a mix of the two, and it's a heavier hat as well, quite firm as well. Not so popularly worn, so more stand out, if you like.
Even in that day?
Even in that day, yes. Yeah. He wore it as an everyday hat.
Everyday hat.
Probably one of his most iconic hats.
Okay, really?
So another iconic hat he regularly wore was the Homburg, which originated in a town called Bad Homburg in southwest Germany in the 19th century. It was popularized by the Prince of Wales, the son of Queen Victoria, who became Edward VII.
Okay.
Churchill certainly wore these from about 1910.
Okay.
So it's a semi-formal hat. The way it differs from the others is it sort of looks like a Homburg, except it has the crease on the top. In the day, there was no pinch at the front. It was a rounded crown like that, with binding on the edge of the brim here.
And so we really see the evolution in the influence of the original silk top hat, with the kind of curved brim, curving up, the binding around it. I mean, wow, this is really incredible, just the history here and how these hats from Lock & Co. really were so much of an important part of Winston Churchill's public image. And I have to say, something as beautiful as this silk top hat, which is exceedingly rare, I wonder what it would have been like to wear something like that.
Well, if you'd like, I can show you. Would you like to have a fitting in our heritage room?
That would be amazing.
Of course, please come this way.
Yeah, thank you. Inside Lock's Heritage Room, tradition and modernity intertwine. Here, clients old and new are not just fitted for hats, but are immersed in an experience that celebrates the shop's storied past.
So welcome to the Heritage Room. This is where we do fittings for our bowler hats and top hats.
Wow.
It also houses a lot of our historical artifacts. Yeah. Wow. We proudly display a picture of Sir Winston Churchill, which was on his wedding day in 1908, wearing one of our silk top hats.
Handsome chap.
On the wall here, we have a selection of head shapes from customers who've been fitted here over the years. Okay. To fit a hard hat, we take a measurement of the contours of your head shape, and then we conform the shape of the hat to match the shape of the head. So to do that, we use this Victorian conformateur, which was invented in Paris by Ali Maillard in 1852.
Really?
Still in everyday use here in Lawrence.
Really? Wow. And so that goes on top of your head.
It does.
It's safe?
Shall I show you how?
Yeah.
Just pop this on here. Okay, so I'll just lower this onto your head. Quick snap.
Wow.
That's it.
It's all still there.
Yep. We'll then cut this out around those dots there, and we'll use that as a template, which will then go into the 4 million, which will be adjusted to match this shape exactly. And then the outer edge of the 4 million is the actual shape and size of your head.
Okay.
This will be used as a block, which will be inserted inside. The hat will be heated up so it's soft and malleable. This goes in and we'll mold it around your head shape.
So it's a truly custom bespoke hat.
Indeed.
Yeah. Today, Lock & Co. honors Winston Churchill as one of its most distinguished clients. as they continue to craft their hats by hand, just as they have since their founding. The spirit of Churchill lives on. As we look back on his life, we discover a man who fully understood the power of not just dressing well, but dressing properly. That prominent people dress to stand out, to distinguish themselves from others. And for Churchill, nothing was more important to him, perhaps, than the hats that crowned his head and the hat maker that helped him leave his mark on history. Lock & Co. still creates Homburgs, bowlers, and top hats, like the rare silk vintage one I'm wearing now, that echo the style of Britain's wartime leader, keeping his legacy alive one hat at a time, and serving as a reminder that true style is timeless. In our next episode, join us as we conclude our exploration into one of the 20th century's most distinguished figures, heading to Winston Churchill's favorite cigar merchant J.J. Fox, then over to his family home, Chartwell House, before finishing at a distinguished black tie event celebrating the great man's life.